that basically, there's definitely a disconnect between creative opportunity and kind of entry-level positions, I would say, and young people who are studying in the creative industries. So I've got a stat, because everyone loves a stat. I get sort of round up emails from different organizations, and one of them was about Ravensbourne Uni and some of the research they did this year. And they found that 43% of young adults were interested in working in the creative industries. But then sort of when you look at how many of them then end up actually, following that through or, having an entry-level opportunity, that really goes down. So there's a massive interest, young people, lots of young people want to do something related to the creative industries. But in terms of, then, even if they study a course, finding an entry-level position can be quite difficult.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Welcome to another episode of The Student Guide, where we have open discussions and discuss things relevant to you, whether you're a current student, a recent graduate, or someone looking to develop for themselves. And as you know, we bring on amazing guest speakers and organizations to talk about some of the work that they do, their own personal stories, but also some amazing advice that you can take home with you. We've got another amazing guest speaker who I've had the pleasure of not attending just one, but two of the events that they've done at Roundhouse Works, and it's definitely been an amazing experience. But as I always say, I don't want to give the backstory. I don't want to describe who the speaker is because, they're amazing people, and it's best if you hear from them specifically. So instead, I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker for today. Sam, could you just let us know a bit about you and some of the work that you do?
Absolutely. So, echoing what you were saying, it's great to sort of be connected. Really good to have you at the events that we did at Roundhouse, and I'm really glad that we can sort of turn this into a bit of a collaboration now. So I'm Samuel. So I am the outreach and community manager at Creative Mentor Network. I'm also a designated safeguarding lead for the charity as well. So I've got sort of a few different hats that I look after. We're a small charity, but we essentially, what I'll do, I'll tell you a lot more about that later, but we essentially set up mentoring programs for young people to engage with. I was actually a mentor for CMN before I got a role there, so that's how I knew about them. I was previously working in education. I worked in sort of further education, so 16 to 19 for 8 years before I actually sort of joined CMN. So had a history of sort of working with young people, especially young people who are interested in music and the creative industries. And that kind of led me to, look at mentorship as an interesting thing for me to do as a mentor. And I was a mentor for CMN and kind of had a young music producer who I'm still in touch with as a mentee. And then sort of, along the line, a role came up at CMN, which I applied to, which I got. So I've been working at CMN for over 2 years now.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, it's really great to sort of see how, I guess, even, I think for a lot of people, they sometimes don't think that whether it's sort of they've been a mentee on a program or they've been a mentor on a program, that they can sort of like ever end up working for that organization, or to even to continue to support that organization after, like, I guess the as a mentee, like the program's ended. But yeah, it's great to see that, you're still doing that. And that, I think, like you said, we're going to dive into it literally right now about like your career journey, as well as how it links to sort of like the creative industries. But yeah, the first official question is essentially, how do you view the relationship between education and employment, especially within the context of the creative industries? Because I think for a lot of people, they might not necessarily know. They might not necessarily know, and especially with like those students who, whether they've just come to university or they've just they're in their final year and they're sort of thinking about, they've got to start working on employment, they've got to fix up their CVs and stuff like that. What would be your answer to that relationship between employability and education?
So I've got sort of a personal history of that as well as sort of professional history. So I guess my journey with kind of my opinion forming on that kind of starts with my own sort of journey at school, being in a secondary school. And, I had lots of interest at the time, I'd say sort of photography, art, media, making music, video editing, and early YouTube, lots of different things that, me and my friends used to do sort of as hobbies outside of lessons. And those were things that weren't really picked up, I guess, by the education system yet. So I definitely had the experience of having lots of things of interest and hobbies that I did with my mates that weren't in the sort of curriculum. So I still sort of went through school and kind of went to university and stuff. But I would say, sort of looking back, that there are probably things that I really could have harnessed at that time that I would have kind of got a lot of energy out of. If they were picked up academically, I think would have been really interesting to follow. Because they're all things I kind of developed kind of really basic skills in just on our own with kind of our friendship group without it really being in the curriculum. So I always kind of had the sense that, I went to school for, just doing the sessions and the lessons that were given to me, and then, other stuff, hobbies and things like that I would do outside. And kind of followed that path and kind of realized, I guess, in my mid-20s that, that didn't really sort of take me anywhere that I was that interested in. And, I still had all these other things that I wanted to do that I could sort of do freelance or kind of build on my own skill sets on, and end up sort of doing a few different things like writing and kind of photography freelance and kind of making some kind of income out of that outside of my full-time role. So that kind of got me thinking about the creative industries and opportunities available. So kind of in a roundabout way, that started the process of me thinking about whether or not young people get the opportunities that they or are allowed the opportunity to develop what their interests are. So during that time, I was working in a pub, sort of in my mid-20s, and I actually ended up starting volunteering for a local music organisation that was down the road from me, and they essentially offer a kind of music courses to 16 to 19-year-olds. And the reason I did that was because I felt like I was a bit of a dead end myself. Sort of just working behind the bar. And I wanted to do something that, could get me some qualifications, kind of open my eyes a bit to kind of education and things that I could kind of get involved in to help. So I did that for about 6 months volunteering, sort of 2 days a week, kind of getting my expenses paid. And that kind of opened me up to, further education, kind of young people education. And then that started my journey. So following that, I kind of got offered a full-time role. And as I said, I worked in, I think it was about 7 or 8 years that I worked in further education from there. So that was for a few different organizations. So I've worked with kind of alternative provisions, which are sort of young people who kind of are outside the mainstream education system. But I've also worked with kind of, slightly more mainstream courses as well. But they've always had a creative lean. So I'd say that from the education side, I had a lot of experience of young people's interests, talking to them. I was also sort of a UCAS advisor and a work experience kind of careers leader towards the end of my time in education. So I got a really good insight into young people and what they wanted to do. And, often would see that there's a bit of a mismatch between what their creative interests are and what they wanted to, I guess, produce and create, in opposed to what they were studying, even if they took a creative course. So that was sort of the first steps. And then after sort of about 7 years of that, I then, wanted to see it from a different angle. So as I said, I moved over to the charity, which I've been doing for 2 years now. And that's more sort of offering mentorship opportunities to young people. But I do work with a lot of schools and a lot of universities who put on careers fairs, and I liaise with a lot of different, students, but also teachers and, other stakeholders as well who work in that area. And I would say, that basically, there's definitely a disconnect between creative opportunity and kind of entry-level positions, I would say, and young people who are studying in the creative industries. So I've got a stat, because everyone loves a stat. I get sort of round up emails from different organizations. And one of them was about Ravensbourne Uni and some of the research they did this year. And they found that 43% of young adults were interested in working in the creative industries. But then sort of when you look at how many of them then end up actually, following that through or, having an entry level opportunity, that really goes down. So there's a massive interest, young people, lots of young people want to do something related to the creative industries. But in terms of, then, even if they study a course, finding an entry level position can be quite difficult. And I know that we're going to look a bit later about sort of some of the challenges that are faced. And I think, those are really key to talk about, because there's, a number of barriers that young people face on different levels that stop them from sort of ever getting to the starting line within the creative industries. So I'd say there's big interest, I'd say, and, we all know that there's exciting opportunities and sort of, there's growing opportunities in certain fields. But I would say that there's definitely sort of a disconnect between the education system, how it's set up in this country, and unfortunately, sort of the way that the creative industries recruit. They're not, in my experience, very well sort of connected.
Thank you. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because our audience know that we have a thing called Mic Check where we share like interesting facts and figures or like stories. And yeah, you've already shared like a really great figure, but I guess the only thing I wanted to add onto that was I know through like friends who, like you said, whether they wanted to get into like acting or into film production or video editing professionally, as you were sort of mentioning there, that it's been a very difficult process for them to sort of get into those fields, and especially I guess bringing it to university. I know, like for example, for certain universities, you have to, like especially if you're a film production or TV student, you have to do like I think it's 70 hours of like filming or something around like filming, whether it's video editing, whether it's hosting like a podcast or a TV show or whatever. You have to do all these things. But there was like a huge, one of my friends who's an international student, she was saying like for international students, especially in the UK, it can be very hard to find like organizations that will give you sort of that opportunity, or it won't be like your visa won't be affected by it, but also they were saying as well to ensure like to have opportunity, like a wide range of opportunities that are sort of give you that like that level of professionalism that once you've sort of graduated, you can, showcase you've done like a wide range of work or you've truly impacted like the development of like a piece of media. So I definitely agree with that there definitely is that disconnect, and it's just about and as you mentioned, we'll be talking some of the challenges, but yeah, I guess sort of like a nice way to link it to the next question is there are obviously organizations and individuals who are working to sort of improve upon that, which brings us to our next question, which is what is CMN or the Creative Mentor Network? I know we sort of briefly touched upon it there, but could we know a bit more about like the backstory and how the organization came to be?
Yeah, for sure. So kind of in the context of what we just spoke about, young people sort of having the interest of getting into the creative industries, but, I guess not necessarily having the experience. I'll say particularly, if you go to a state school, having the experience of being encouraged to follow your interests or, to be encouraged enough to have the confidence to put yourself forward for some of those opportunities. So in that context, we essentially are a charity that we offer sort of a service to young people. So we basically work with 16 to 27-year-olds. We run a few different programs, and there is a bit of kind of difference in the age groups that we work with within those. But typically it's 16 to 27 years old across the board. And what we do is we work with creative industry companies. So some of our partners include Soho House, Sony, Google, Amazon, lots of different sort of creative industry companies that are smaller as well, sort of, mid-level agencies and smaller agencies. And what we do is we train their staff up to be mentors. So they'll do on average sort of 8 hours of training with us. As a charity, we focus on young people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds as well, because those are the young people that have the most barriers to getting into the creative industry. So what we do is we train the staff members from these companies on, frameworks of how to support a young person, how to be a good mentor, but we also do look at being a change maker, kind of advocacy, and looking at what it means, what class means, and sort of how it affects your journey into the creative industries and how you might want to support someone who has things stacked against them in some ways. So once that's done, once we've got those kind of staff members trained up, we'll then match them with a young person, as I said, sort of 16 to 27 typically, who wants to get into the creative industries, and they'll do 16 weeks of one-to-one mentorship. So, looking at young people who, as an example, you might have someone who's, at college, year 13, who's sort of 17 or 18, who, is really interested in sort of media, or looking at film and TV. Like we've got, mentors, for example, who work in advertising, and sort of looking at actual tangible roles that exist, that young people can sort of look at, and kind of learn about that, will connect them to the industry. Because I think one of the things that young people often say about, education is that, they're not necessarily always meeting people in the industry they want to work into. That's one of the disconnects, that your teacher isn't working in the industry. So therefore, there's going to be a sort of a second-hand kind of passover of information there. But the other thing is also, lack of work experience, the fact that, lots of young people don't ever get the chance to do work experience as part of their education, especially not in the career or area they want to get into. So having a mentor, someone that can really support you one-to-one, help you build a network, help you look for opportunity, help you build professional portfolios and CVs, among many other things, is really valuable. So, I mean, as a mentor, as I said, I've got the benefit of the fact that I was actually a part of the program before and as a mentor. And one of the things that I worked on with my young person straight away was basically looking at, they wanted to be a music producer. I wanted to work in a music studio. Kind of had, these ideas about wanting to do it, but didn't really know where to get started. So, I just came in and sort of helped them to kind of develop a sheet of, of studios across London, and then kind of like contact details, basically a systematic approach to how you might want to get a job, which you wouldn't really know about if you hadn't, previously applied to a role before. And what we did was we, just literally went through and sort of sent out emails and, called around and things like that. And that actually quite quickly turned around to a job offer. So it just goes to show, that young person had all the skills there already and, the ability to be hired, but they just didn't have, because they hadn't had work experience before, a systematic way of sort of even knowing where to start. So, that's one of the many ways that a mentor can help. I think it's just, something that I think everyone who kind of works in a charity probably would say as well, is that, we wish we had a mentor probably when we were sort of entering the creative industry. So I think it really comes from that type of, wanting to sort of help connect to kind of the labour market and, opportunities available.
Definitely agree. And I think, like you said, like even, to bring it to myself and the team, because none of us had ever done like podcasting before. None of us had ever, I guess, like for the most part, at least when like myself and my co-founders, like we weren't like media experts. So as you said, like having a mentor like that early on, even for like just figuring out like what's the best way to do podcasting, what's the best resources and all of that stuff, where like the information is out there. And I do agree that, some people might say, oh, you can just find it if you look for it. And yes, it is out there, but sometimes having a mentor to point you in the right direction, because, we say as a team that there's a lot of stuff when we look back on and we're just like, gosh, man, we spent all this time and all this effort doing like all these things, when actually, if we had someone that, knew a bit more about the process, or like knew how to sort of like knew how to use the software, or the right people to sort of like connect with, or how to write like a good email to invite someone onto the podcast, that would have been like a huge help when we were starting. So yeah, I definitely agree that like having the idea of mentorship and having mentors is really great to sort of empowering people. One question that we're going to go on to another question soon, but one thing I think I probably should have asked at the start, which is, I think, very important, is so at the one of the events that I attended that Sam was hosting, we spoke about the creative industries, and I know we've mentioned that a lot today, but I think it'll be really good, because I think there was one thing that I learned when, and if you're happy to talk about it, Sam, I think our audience would really like it, because you spoke about at the event what the creative industries is, because I think a lot of people have perceptions on what is included under that. So just to throw in a question that I guess out of the blue is actually, what is the creative industries? Because there was a lot of things that like you had on the slide that I looked back on and I was like, yeah, I had no idea that this was actually technically included in the creative industries. But yeah, if you could just let us know.
Yeah, it's a good point. And there's a reason that I do include that in the talks that I do, is because, just by the nature of my role, I do say the word the creative industries a lot, usually one time per sentence. It's very often, especially when I'm in sort of, schools and stuff, I'm regularly talking about creative industries. And we often find that young people, even teachers, tutors who, are kind of guiding young people, don't actually know sort of what the creative industries are sort of as a whole. And it is difficult because obviously they are all lumped together. So, it's difficult to know a real broad overview often of kind of what they are, as the fact that they're changing as well. We're at a time when, things are changing quickly in terms of, sort of new tech and things like that. So obviously that leads to change as well. The other thing about the creative industries is the fact that, lots of it is built up by freelancers and also sort of small agencies and companies. So it can be really hard to track, what those are and kind of how they're working effectively. I think even the government has quite a hard time to kind of track exactly what's going on. So the definition that I use is from Eric. So Eric are a careers app, so I will shout them out. They're definitely worth checking out for kind of all students, and we do put our opportunities on there. And they do a lot of research and insight into the creative industry, sort of young people's engagement with it as well. And I use their definition. So they've got a really good page on their website where you can click and see what the 16 different creative industries are. So I'm not going to list them all off here right now. One, because I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But two, I don't want to bore people. But essentially, the point that is important is the fact that, they are more broad than I think a lot of people realize. And they do interact with each other. So it's everything from architecture to film and TV to fashion, to gaming, to music, to journalism and podcasting. It really does kind of have a wide reach. So there's countless opportunities within each of those areas. So the point that I usually try to make to young people is to kind of, I guess, take away the stigma of being creative, because that's one thing that we'll talk about when we come to the challenges that are faced. But I'd say there is a stigma around the word creative, kind of when you're at school, and it's often seen as something that is a hobby or a side project, as opposed to what your real kind of career should be. So it's about the reason I do that part of the talk and kind of talk to young people about what the creative industries actually are, as well as tutors and careers advisors, because it is broader than you often think. So one takeaway I would say is sort of go on Eric. If you type in Eric app, as a student, it's a really great resource because they'll show you loads of different opportunities, and it's really worth familiarizing yourself on there with kind of what their definition of the creative industries are. Sam and May, who run it, the co-founders, are really worth following on LinkedIn as well, because they've also they're there to sort of provide sort of updates about sort of what the creative industries are. You can also follow CMN on LinkedIn and sort of follow our socials, because we have a lot of kind of interviews with past mentees and mentors that kind of talk about the creative industry as well, and we do sort of an annual report as well. So it's worth sort of I guess following people who are doing that research, because it is changing all the time. So if you want to be in the know and you want to sort of get a role in these industries, it's really important to kind of sign up to the newsletters, kind of follow the people that are doing the research and kind of looking at it as it develops. And then that way, you can make sure that you're kind of on the cusp of, what's happening at the moment. And, that way you can find ways to plug yourself in.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, we're now going to go on to the next question, which is all about success stories. So we really love to know, are there any success stories? It could either be from sort of your time as a mentor, it could be from your time working with CMN. But could you share any success stories of young people that have entered the creative industries through taking part of the CMN and have gone on to do like amazing things?
Absolutely. So we are lucky enough to sort of be a charity that works with sort of hundreds of young people and hundreds of mentors every year. So, as you can imagine, we've got lots and lots of success stories. I'd like to think that everyone who finishes the program, is a success story in their own way, because they have, a journey that they go through. At the end of every program, we have a showcase. So there's a chance for sort of the people on the program to come and talk about what they've done. They do a presentation about sort of, what their journey's been like throughout the program. And, it's really great to see those. We probably have about 5 or 6 presentations per program. And, it's really great to see, all the people that put themselves forward for that, because that's the chance to really see kind of what they've done and what they've achieved. So there's countless examples. One thing that I'd recommend is to actually look on our Instagram and to look at the mentee spotlight series that we do. So we've actually got a series where we kind of interview our mentees who talk about kind of what they do, what they've done in the program. I've kind of pulled some examples, from that. So we've got one mentee called Renita, who was a film director and has recently directed a dance short film that talks about self-love and self-hate, and it was awarded the best international experimental film at the Alternative Film Festival. So that's an example of sort of a mentee, putting themselves forward for awards and kind of, coming out on top with that. We had a mentee called Charlotte who does some really interesting things with kind of styling and costuming and fashion design, kind of actually looking at wearable tech. So I don't know if this is a thing that you've ever heard of before, but I've only heard of it recently. But, actually looking at, how you can incorporate tech into fashion and actually in garments that you wear. And Charlotte kind of used that, those ideas to kind of look at styling a stage production of Macbeth. So if you look online, there's actually some videos on that story as well of like what the kind of mentee developed and used then on a stage production. Another good example is we have Sarah, who actually founded their own social enterprise. So they've got a company called Ambessa Play, and that's all about sort of building educational kits for children. So and Sarah volunteers to kind of teach kids to code as well, and was this year's Innovate UK Women in Innovation awardee. So we've got honestly, countless examples. Like I could sit here all day and kind of read through case studies of amazing mentees, because they really do some amazing things, both while they're on and off the program. But I would recommend, definitely, if people are interested in kind of looking at some of our alumni and kind of what they've achieved, definitely look at the Mentee Spotlight series, because Simran and Miles, who kind of do our interviews and the marketing stuff, do a really great job at sort of showing kind of the amazing work that the mentees are doing.
Oh, thank you. And I think definitely it's really great to see like the wide variety of incredible work that the mentees are doing, both, like you said, both on the program and off. But yeah, we're going to go on to the next question, which we've been teasing a lot, which is about some of the challenges that young people face when trying to transition, especially from education. So whether that's, they leave after sixth form or college and want to go straight into the creative industries, or whether this is sort of like after graduating, they want to go into the creative industries. What are some of the challenges that you found that young people face when trying to do that transition?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, there are, a lot of barriers to getting into the creative industries, especially for, as we've mentioned, young people who are from lower socioeconomic and working class backgrounds. So the reason that we sort of focus on those young people and kind of exclusively offer them the mentorship opportunities is because, it's needed, and it's an area that, growth does need to happen in. So looking at sort of some of the barriers they face, we've got sort of, I think it's 7 listed on our website that you can kind of see, and which I'll talk you through now. And these are sort of different areas that, whether it's industry, education, or even societal, are the things that, may stop a young person or hold a young person back from, potentially following an interest or creative sort of career. So one is network-driven recruitment. So, industry, that's an industry problem of, companies sort of hiring people that they already know, or, you hear stories and you kind of look at how sort of, things like the film and TV industry work, for example, and, they'll often just sort of work within WhatsApp groups and, pass jobs through kind of internally to people they may already know, or may kind of already be connected with, which obviously doesn't really allow much opportunity for people who are outside of that to ever know what's going on or how you can even get involved. So there's a lot of sort of in-house network recruitment, which obviously alienates people who don't have access to that network. There's a culture of working for free. I'm sure, unfortunately, if you're sort of starting off in the creative industries, that's something that many people, if not all, come up against at some point. People asking you to sort of do things, whether you're photographer, can you come and photograph my wedding for free, or, things like, well, it could be a whole bunch of different things. But, people asking you to do things unpaid, often at a loss of your own pocket, especially now, with cost of living, getting worse. It's just completely often impossible to do that work. If you're working full time and you're studying, you can't do work for free for people. So, unpaid internships are illegal, but there's still, unfortunately, a culture, and you do see these things happening. Even bigger companies, offering, exposure for work. So there's a culture of that. Another industry problem is culture fit versus culture add. So, companies will often look at sort of finding people who fit with the culture that already exists, as opposed to sort of looking at how they can actually add to their culture and sort of bring in, more diverse voices to kind of, make what they're doing even better. So, there's definitely a focus in hiring, I think, on will they fit into what we're already doing, as opposed to are they somebody that can bring something really great that we're actually lacking on. If you look at education, you've got poor in-school career services. I have to say this is getting better. As I said, I've worked sort of in the careers kind of education area for a while, and in the past 2 years, I think there's been a real upturn in schools looking at how they can support young people in the careers. So that is getting better, but unfortunately for the creative industries, I think there's still, as we said earlier, a disconnect between young people's interests and what labour market information is available to them. Often if I do a careers fair at sort of a secondary school or something like that, or a college, more often than not, I'll be the only person from the creative industries. You'll have the police, you'll have the army, you'll have even banks, and you'll have like lots of different organizations that put money into outreach and letting young people know what's available. But for some reason, creative industry companies don't often do that. So how can you expect, obviously, careers leaders and stuff to also know what's going on if the creative industry companies are being quite insular? There's a narrow curriculum, so looking at passing exams, as sort of the primary function of sort of looking at archaic subjects and kind of not really allowing young people opportunity to explore things that might be developing, and then, as we just said, exam focused curriculum. So it's all about sort of getting that mark in the GCSE or A level, which doesn't leave it kind of doesn't leave much space for, I guess, young people to actually develop skills outside of that. And then if you look at societal, one is poor industry perception in lower socioeconomic communities. So, this is one that we'll often hear. You talk to a young person who might have a really strong interest in a creative area, but if they talk to their guardians or if they talk to someone at school, they might be discouraged from doing that because it's not seen as a stable career path. They might be seen as something that is wishy-washy or isn't gonna be sort of something that you can rely on. So I think a lot of young people don't have that support because older generations don't see the creative industries as valid. There's cuts to arts funding. Unfortunately, that's something we see regularly. Across education. There's lots of stats on that which I won't go into because I don't want to get them wrong. But you can find lots of articles online recently about just the amount of levels that the education and kind of arts funding has been cut. And then looking at kind of intersectionality and degrees of disadvantage. So, looking at socioeconomic disadvantage, but then, other forms of disadvantage that are layered onto that. So, for example, if you're a woman trying to go into tech, there's different areas of disadvantage that will then, unfortunately, kind of layer on top of each other. So, looking at also young people, having, unfortunately, those things stacked against them in terms of getting into the creative industry. So I kind of just listed those off. There's lots online about those, but unfortunately, sort of those are the things that are in place that sort of stop young people from pursuing their career paths. So the really good thing I think about mentorship and why I'm passionate about it is I think that mentorship really does look at trying to kind of overcome many of those obstacles for young people and help them to sort of get past some of those and get their first role or job in the creative industries.
I definitely agree, and I think that's why the work that CMN does is really great, because it does help to sort of overcome all these challenges that you just spoke about, and I think it also links perfectly. Mental health is really important to us at Pick Up the Mic, and we love to share resources that can support your mental health, and that's why we are so glad to have today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get you started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live appointments when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't right for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at an affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/pickupthemic. I've also linked them down below in the description. So again, that's betterhelp.com/pickupthemic, MIC, and start your journey today. with the last question I'll be asking Sam today before we go on to passing the mic, which is all about, in your opinion, what are some of the key skills or qualities that young people would need to succeed in the creative industries?
Yeah, so I'm going to use some of the skills and areas that was actually kind of passed over to me by MDX. So MDX are sort of Middlesex University sort of creative careers section, and we've been sort of going to their events for a while, and they've got an upcoming report, and they actually kind of gave us an insight into some of the skills that they're looking at as being sort of things that succeed. And I think I really echo what they say. I mean, these I would very much agree with these, and these are entrepreneurship, they're technical agility, communication, empathy, and inclusion, curiosity and learning, collaborative innovation, resilience and adaptability, leadership and influence, and problem solving and delivery. So there's obviously quite a lot to dig into there, but I think those across the board, if you sort of look at those as areas that you develop, those are sort of working skills that I think will really kind of benefit you in kind of looking at getting work. I think these are sort of some of the skills outside of your technical. Obviously, technical skills in there is only covering one of those areas. So I think probably a lot of people focus on the technical skills of kind of what they're doing, but probably don't have much of an opportunity to develop the rest of those areas. So I think kind of holistically looking at skills as covering more of those bases, I think that's a really important thing to look at when accessing work, because it's unfortunately not as simple as having a skill that is good. For example, editing. You can be a really great editor, and obviously that will get you so far. But I think outside of that, there's so many more skills that you need in terms of being a freelancer and kind of developing your client base and kind of looking at how you kind of create a career out of that. So look out for that report. Hopefully that will be coming out soon. I know there's sort of a lot to dig in, and we probably don't have enough time, but sort of I really would just like to echo that, I really like the fact that those skills are kind of broad. It's not just kind of focusing on one thing. It's kind of looking at holistically, what you might need to develop, whether it's kind of in your personal kind of interpersonal skills, or whether it's kind of, looking at your actual technological skills about what you need to get a role.
Yeah, and I think it's great that, as you mentioned, like a lot of them are not like yes, with tech, it does sort of, like you mentioned, like fit with one field, but for the most part, all of those are skills that across any of the sort of careers or companies within the creative industry would be very beneficial. And like you said, even just not from a professional sense, from a personal sense as well, things like communication and empathy are things that are really great when it comes to also managing the personal relationships and going through sort of like those things as well. So I think, it'll be really great to sort of, when that report comes out, to see more about it, because I think it just shows that, I guess, having these skills will not only sort of help you within the creative industries, but it will also help you to just essentially, like without a better word for it, just to be a better person in general.
Cool. Yeah. I think it's a hot topic. I think I even just read an article earlier today. It was about the I think it was a CEO of Channel 4, and he's said that he thinks that Gen Zers basically don't have the ability to kind of debate and kind of argue or even have an opinion on things in the workplace. So he's come out with quite a strong statement. So it's quite a hot topic, and there's people with different takes on it. But I think it's it's definitely an area that lots of universities and employers are looking at, because I think because things have changed so much, in terms of the working world, they're actually changing, almost daily in terms of tech that's released and opportunities available. I think skills are such a hot topic, aren't they? In terms of what do you actually need to develop? You hear stories of people who kind of work from home and like have 2 or 3 different roles. And I think the key point of that is the fact that people are asking the question of like what is work, and what skills do I actually need to put forward, and what time do I actually need to put forward to be effective. So it's an area that I follow. But I think, as I said, I think the bottom line out of it is that it's really important to if you are looking to start a career, to have a broad look at your skills, and not just to kind of look at one thing. We're not going to have one career in our lives where we develop sort of one key skill, we get into a role, and then we kind of keep that career for the rest of our lives, which I guess is, what we traditionally may have thought a career would be. It's very much now sort of, building skills, jumping around, even industry, jumping between different industries with transferable skills. So definitely an area I'm interested in. Maybe we can have a catch up one day about kind of how that's developed.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm gonna hand over to Sam. Sam's got a question for me. Could you please let me know the question you'd like to ask me, Sam?
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you the question. I'll tell you a little bit about why I've chosen this question. So the question that I've chosen for you is, what are the two main anxieties that you think university leavers have about going into the working world? And the reason I've chosen that is, as I said before, I get to talk to a lot of university students. And I hear, lots of different things that, they'll say about how their course has been and, what their thoughts are about getting a job. But I think it's really important to hear, directly from, someone like yourself who also has that kind of connection with them, to hear, what you think at the moment is happening, and, what are people worried about in terms of transferring from uni over to work.
So I'd say the two, well, one definitely comes to mind, and I think that's just like, what am I now? Because discussed it recently in an episode that I saw this like Instagram reel of someone who was a uni student, and they were just like, "Oh, I've been a student for like the last 3 years, and they've really enjoyed their time at university." But they were just like, "What do I do? Like, who am I now? Because I've been so focused on like, getting that degree or just working towards like, getting into that career." And for the last 3 years, they've had like a strict schedule. They've known like where they had to be. They've had like an idea of like, I need to be in this space. I need to work on this. I've got these deadlines. And then I think especially for students who, when it comes to sort of that, it's coming up to graduation, you're about to leave. There's a lot of focus on like, okay, so I've done all of this, I've done all my grades. What do I actually now want to get into? So I guess figuring out like who you are and what you want to do next is definitely a big anxiety. I've said it before that for me, like the stuff that I do, like where I'm working now and the work that I do now is not what I would have probably expected when I was just about to leave secondary school, even when I was at secondary school. But sometimes I think it's just being able to just think, not focus so much on like what you want to do, but more about like, focus more on what you want to do, but not necessarily like the company that you want to work for and all of that things. Because sometimes you'll find that you might say like, I guess kind of like we were talking about here today. So rather than someone saying, oh, I have to work for like, if I'm interested in film and TV production, like I have to work for like Disney or Netflix, and instead saying, actually, no, I want to support like a film production or a TV production, and then just seeing those opportunities as they come along. Because sometimes you'll just be so focused on like working for a specific company that I guess kind of like what we shared here, that you might not necessarily get that experience or gain that knowledge if you were to then say, actually, I'm happy to sort of like work anywhere, but I just want to be doing this type of work. So I guess figuring out like who you are and what you want to do is definitely one of the big ones. And I think sort of to add on to that, the next anxiety I would say is probably just on like I guess kind of like you're trying to avoid comparison. So whether that's if a person's got like siblings, but I think more importantly, it's like with friends and stuff, because as you're sort of like, whether you're just in your final year, you've just left, you're just about to graduate, whichever sort of stage you are at uni, there is that tendency to sort of be like, oh, okay, cool. Like I've heard like a friend or someone in my uni, they've already like applied for like loads of graduate programs. They're signed up to work for like this company after they leave. Should I, like, you get into that mindset of like, oh, should I be applying for graduate programs now? Oh, actually, I'm not sure of like, I guess what I want to do. So there's always that like need to be like comparing. And sometimes you might even be like, well, actually, I'm on a graduate program, but, someone else is working for a bigger name or a better company. Or you might find out they're getting paid more than you would on your graduate program, or like you might both be like applying for a full-time job in different companies, and you're in the same industry, but someone's got like a better job than you do, and you're just like, well, start comparing yourself. So I think, that comparison and just sort of not necessarily focusing, I guess linking back to the first thing of just like not focusing on like, anyone, like, you don't have to compare yourself to anyone else. Just as long as you're doing what you enjoy and you're happy with, that's the most important thing. But yeah, those are probably the two that I would say definitely, at least for me, that I've experienced, and that I know like others have experienced as well. But yeah, those are the two big ones.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, and I think it's it's a tougher time to kind of transfer over to the working world. I remember, I mean, as I said, kind of my journey started, as a result, in a way of that period. It was leaving uni. I went to uni in Brighton and kind of coming back, and I did English language and literature, and basically not really having any insight into actually what that looked like in the working world. Like, I definitely developed skills and kind of things along the course of that journey that helped me. But in terms of actually, if you ask me sort of, after I left, what are you doing next? I genuinely had no idea. And as I said, I went into sort of, working at bars and kind of restaurants and things like that. And that was actually for quite a while. That was for a few years before I then sort of, got to the point where I branched out into wanting to do something in education and creative industries. So it's a tough time. And I think, I think what you said there is great advice. Because it really was as a result of me following sort of the things that I was interested in and kind of, following them down a path and experimenting that then actually led me to kind of getting my first kind of role in education and kind of, working in music a little bit as well. So I think there's some great advice in there.
Thank you. And yeah, I think one final thing to add to that is just kind of like what you were just sharing there, of just being like open to sort of see, those opportunities, because you might start off just working like in one organization, but sometimes you might just be like, actually, I want to try, like, there's this other role that seems a bit more interesting, whether it's within your organization or outside, and just being, I guess, open to that, not necessarily like not feeling like you have to, like, you have to stay in a company because, I don't know, whether it's and I guess like time, like we were sort of saying now, with everything sort of going on, it is kind of tough to sort of want to switch industries. But yeah, just focusing on that, just thinking that, if you feel like you're not really enjoying your work, or you feel like actually, you're not following your passions or your interests, then do feel that you can just actually look into sort of like what other roles there are in other organizations and start working towards that. Because yeah, kind of like we mentioned here, if you'll always find it hard to enjoy the work that you're doing if you don't actually enjoy the work itself. So, there's always going to be tough times with work. There's always going to be stressful times. But if you're truly enjoying what you do, you'll sort of like just be like, it's tough, but I really I know this end product, or the end of this like project is going to be like really great. It's going to really help people. It's going to really impact them. Whereas if it's something that you don't enjoy, you'll find it really hard to like put your best into it. You'll find it hard to sort of like go through and complete the task. So yeah, definitely make sure that you make the most of that.
Yeah, I think I've got loads of examples of, friends and like people that I know who've sort of gone into working for, creative industry organizations and sort of have a real sort of idea about how they think it's going to be. And I don't know, what they think it's going to be like in terms of, sort of how they work, but, work is work. And I think, I've got lots of examples of people who have gone into roles that they, really thought they would, would be creative and that they would really enjoy, and, have not lasted long there because, the way that the place works doesn't really fit with them, or was quite tough. And then lots of examples of people, as you said, who really enjoy the creative way that they work, but they might work for something that isn't considered glamorous. It's not as sort of glamorous as sort of working in music or anything like that, but they love what they do. So definitely sort of you can be creative in your way that you approach work and you work yourself. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to always be working on kind of a creative industry outcome as well.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, we've come to the MC of the Month section. And as you guys can imagine, yes, today's MC of the Month is the Creative Mentor Network, because they do a lot of amazing work to support young people. They've got a lot of great programs. And I definitely would recommend checking out their website. You can... we'll share all the details about that very shortly, but you can, as a young person, you can sign up to be a mentee, and you can get that opportunity to work with people who are working in the industries that you'd like to be involved in, as well as getting the opportunity to sort of work and showcase your work in different spaces. So not only with the showcase, but they CMN do loads of great events. So even, I saw on their Instagram page that they did like an event at Sony Music. So you can always have these like great opportunities to like be in spaces that you might not necessarily have gotten into, or like at that age, you might not necessarily been able to see like certain offices or, meet certain people who work in certain organizations. So you can start to have that like early access of building a network for yourself. So when you are, whether it's you're about to leave uni, you're about to leave like sixth form or college, even like if you're just sort of on the moment, just like looking for job opportunities, thinking about changing careers, you can get that sort of like early kickstart to sort of like help fuel that your career. So Creative Mentor Network are MCs of the month, and of course we'll be including the links below, but they'll also be on the website as well, with a bit more information as well as how you can find out more about them. But yeah, we've come to the final section of today's episode, which is of course the takeaway section, where we look back on the whole episode, and we discuss, we basically say what is the key thing for you, our wonderful audience, to take home with you. So Sam, we've spoken about a lot of things, empowering young people, especially within the creative industries, what the creative industries is, CMN. But what would be your one key thing you would like our audience to take home with them today?
So I think, looking at kind of what we do as an organization, I would say the key takeaway should be to kind of consider mentorship as an option. Whether that's through us, so we've obviously got some amazing free opportunities available, or whether it's sort of through, in general, reaching out to people and trying to develop a network of people who might be able to mentor you in some fashion. I'd consider that as an option. So outside of, obviously lots of your listeners will be doing the work at uni, building the skills that they need to get into creative industries and kind of follow their path. But, do consider mentorship as an option, and, put yourself out there. Networking is really important. And I think kind of having a goal of finding a mentor, someone in your field who, has the experience and kind of has, done what you want to do, is really, really helpful. So, we're always here to support with that. It's free opportunities from us, but, as you'll know as well, I'm sort of really open to sort of talking to people. If people have questions about mentorship or, want to find out about ways they can get involved, so I really encourage those people to reach out to us directly. I'm really happy to sort of, take calls with people and kind of, email back suggestions as well. So, please reach out. And I think the one takeaway should just be consider mentorship and, build a network outside of kind of your studies as well.
Perfect. Oh, thank you. And I guess that very nicely leads on to literally the end of the episode. So yeah, thank you, Sam, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing more about yourself, your journey, but also the amazing work that CMN does. Yeah, you sort of teased it there. If people want to get in touch, whether it's with yourself, they want to know a bit more about CMN, they want to see, as you mentioned, some of these mentee spotlights, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so definitely follow us on socials. So we're at Creative Mentor Network on Instagram. That's a good place to start. We've got lots of different examples of, as I said, previous mentees, the opportunities that we're currently running, also all the events that we run, the networking events we put on there as well. So that's a really good place to start. And then beyond that, check out our website. We've got a section on the website that's for young people. So we've got all the information about the current opportunities that are available. The next exciting ones that we have coming up are called Break the Wall. And we've got a number of those running between now and sort of the end of 2024. So it's a really good time to apply. But also, as I said, also we do networking events for free, and we also have a jobs board for sort of entry-level positions and mid-level positions. So I know that's really popular between sort of students as well, because it's a really great time to start looking at opportunities that are available and putting yourself out there. So basically, check us out online. My email is also on there. So if you kind of get through to us directly, I'll always get back to you and support you as well.
Perfect. And thank you to our wonderful audience for coming back for another episode. If you like this episode, a like, comment, and subscribe is always appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss whether it's episodes of the Student Guide or any of our other podcasts, please make sure you click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, please do check out our Patreon page. The link is also down below. You get to receive some perks, but you also get to help with the production of all of this. And finally, if you're interested in checking out some of our other podcast channels, as we've mentioned, we sort of had a bit of a split, then please do make sure you check out, if you're interested in gaming, check out our gaming channel, Pick Up the Controller. If you're interested in anime, then please check out Senseis of Anime. And finally, if you are interested in learning a bit more about some of your favorite TV shows, your sci-fi TV shows, comic books, they're also now doing a bit of gaming lore and book lore as well, then please do check out The Two Maesters with Joshua and Morgan. But yeah, we're going to close the chapter on the student guide today. We'll see you next time when we open a new chapter of the student guide. Have a wonderful day and speak to you all soon.